Hey guys, what it do? It's your boy Supreme Chiha the God, and today I want to talk about Omniscient Reader, which is a story I literally just started a few days ago. I'm about 120 chapters in, and I just want to say that it is a phenomenal story. I really love the characters. I really like that. It's like, for me, it's a better Solo Leveling because other characters, side characters get full developments. The protagonist gets a lot of development, and a lot of things are happening. It can be a little convoluted with the amount of things that's happening, but I think overall it's just fantastic. It's definitely one of my favorite webtoons that I've read so far, and it doesn't lose your interest. It doesn't really get boring. There's always new scenarios, new things happening. And really today I wanted to focus on the brilliant and smart way that Omniscient Reader created its two overpowered quote-unquote protagonists, right? Obviously the main protagonist is the reader, Dokja, and the second and true protagonist of the story is Jung-Yuk, right? Jung-Yuk. And I think it's cool that it has these two protagonists, and it basically tells you that the actual protagonist of the story is supposed to be Jung-Yuk, and our protagonist, the reader, is somebody. It's like a virus, somebody that's not supposed to be there. And if you really look at it in a kind of profound way, right? Our protagonist is the reader of his story's protagonist, right? And we are the reader of Dokja, who's our protagonist. Which is really interesting. It's kind of like 2D, 3D, 4D, 5D, you know what I'm saying? And I think how it does overpowered well. And I'll do another video on why Dokja is such a great character. Great, right? And he's a great character. It does a great job on overpowered because the world is set up that our protagonist powers make sense. He's the only person to have ever finished the story, right? 3 ways to survive an apocalypse or whatever. 3 ways to survive an apocalypse. And the fact that he's the only one, he gets these buffs, and he gets to remember things that he may not be amazing at remembering, because he can't remember everything, right? It's a 3,000 and something chapter book. But because he knows, I think actually the later the scenarios, the more he should know it. But he's actually constantly changing what's happening in the story by interacting with it. And as a result, there's a lot of unknowns, right? He knows a lot, but he also doesn't know a lot. But then the way he uses his knowledge is really well put. And not just him, even characters that don't know as much as him, the way they've used their knowledge, it's like it makes sense. Not everybody, sometimes you get characters and there's just protagonists, and they're frustratingly stupid, or frustratingly just don't make the decisions you want the protagonist to make. Dokja constantly makes the decisions you want him to make, and sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he makes mistakes, sometimes he's overconfident because of what he knows, and sometimes he fails, and sometimes he and I think that's the beauty of it. Like, his side characters are useful. You know what I'm saying? I feel like in Solo Leveling, it is called Solo Leveling, he doesn't need anybody. You know what I'm saying? He just does shit by himself. And he's just OP, strongest person ever, automatically, like immediately. You know what I'm saying? While Dokja is not. He cheats. He cheats and uses knowledge and tools to his advantage to get the dub, if you may. But he also gets a lot of help, like a ton of help. Like, without help, he doesn't make it through most of the scenarios. Without help, and he's already broken. He already knows what the story holds and what the constellations and all these gods and things are, and what they can do for the most part. And yet he can't solo this world. In fact, he goes out of his way to make sure that Jung-Yuk does not die, because if he dies, the whole world might reset, because Jung-Yuk might be what they call the canon event, or the axis, or whatever. He is the center point of this world surviving, because if Jung-Yuk dies even once, he regresses. Jungkook cannot die. always regresses until he finishes the world, the game, whatever. That's his ability. He is more broken than the Omniscient Reader. And I'll explain why. He's more broken because no matter what happens, how many times he dies, he always comes back. But the problem is he does lose some of his mental fortitude, some of his, you know what I'm saying, he senses, some of his, not senses necessarily, but he's like mental capacity and stuff, because trauma, it builds up over and over and over, and he does not have the fourth wall trauma blocking, right? Which I think, you know, Dokja has, because he's a reader. So to him, as long as he views the story as a story and not reality, he actually gets buffs. And I think that's something he sometimes fails to realize, because the more immersion he gets into it, the stronger he gets, but also the less his fourth wall defenses help him. So it's kind of like an interesting thing. To level up, he has to immerse, right? But if he immerses too much, the fourth wall starts breaking and he starts, you know, getting into the story. And if he gets into the story, I think he also becomes a character. So it's really, really interesting to see just how everything is unfolding, the way the author came up with the idea of having two overpowered characters and having a protagonist, a de facto protagonist in the story, and yet we don't follow that protagonist. We follow the character that isn't a protagonist but has the ability to change the outcome for the protagonist. And it's interesting as well that the author chose the third regression, because I think this Jungkook is still a person that has a lot to learn. He's only regressed 3 times, but he's also created a lot of connections in his regressions, right? And he, you know, and he I think he was supposed to die in this regression, but our protagonist is preventing it, because what happens to those universes when Jungkook dies, right? Does the whole thing reset, right? Will the Omniscient Reader, Dokja, be present in the next one? He probably wouldn't. He is actually the anomaly, because in I suppose you can say, if time in this world is like constantly happening at the same time, the Omniscient Reader probably has died in every version apart from the version that didn't exist, apart from this version where he finished the book. You know, so it's kind of interesting. And you know, they ask the interesting question: is reality becoming the book, or is the book becoming reality? I just think it's just it's if you place, you know, the starting point of your story a certain way and you compose your world in a certain way, when you have overpowered characters, it doesn't feel too ass poolly, right? Our protagonist was a loner kid that grew up reading this story, and this story has kept him alive, and Jungkook has kept him alive. That's the character that kept him alive. And I think he, even himself, by being a part of the world, is starting to understand Jungkook way more, because while reading it as the reader, you know, you have way more knowledge than the character. And he was like, why is he making this decision? How does he not figure this out? Or how does this and that? And the crazy thing is, Jungkook, by its third regression, has figured out so much more than our protagonist Dokja even realized. And he's, I don't want to say be nerfing himself, but he has been nerfing himself in order to save certain people and to try to get a certain outcome. And you know, he's not afraid to die and try again. And even the interaction, obviously spoilers alert here, the interaction they have with the flood, I'm just gonna say the flood to keep it vague enough, and how his reaction wasn't to cry or whatever. It was, hey, who made you have that deal? Who gave you that deal? Okay, I will find him and I will murder him. I will avenge you. You know? And he has so much love for all these characters that he meets, even though when they die, his reaction is, as the leader, is to stay stoic. but he goes out of his way in every regression after that to ensure that that doesn't happen. And if it does happen, he makes sure to find that person who did it and take revenge. I think he's such an interesting character. I think he's what makes the story way more interesting. The fact that you have an actual supposed to be protagonist over the story, and then we have Dokja who's hijacking the story. But yet Dokja also needs him in what he's doing. He needs him because he has the capability to actually end and destroy everything in the world as the regressor. His potential is, I think, even beyond the Omniscient readers, because it's his story. He's supposed to win it. The world is built around for him to find a way to win. And with the Omniscient readers' help, I think both of them are going to do some amazing things. And I thought that's why I really, really love the story. To have two characters like this is not, you know what I'm saying, it's rare. It's not something you just have, where you have two completely broken characters and they almost counterbalance each other, and they have a really cool bromance that's, you know, it's cool, and it's just real, and the way Jungkook just adapts to these changes and realizes almost immediately, like, yo, something is wrong here. It's amazing. It's amazing. I really, really love the story, and I think the more we discover about the two of them, I think the better. And I'm really, really excited to catch up to it. I think I'm about to catch up probably in the next 2 days. But yeah, I just want to talk about Omniscient Reader and why it's such a smart and well-written story. And yes, it gets a little convoluted sometimes with the constellations and the gods and the this and the that and the wab and those beyond and it keeps going. But I think its premise and its ideas are fantastic, and I think it's executing it really, really well. And that's really all you can ask for. I think a lot of these stories in webtoons, and I think that's something interesting about them, they have really, I don't want to say convoluted ideas, but they have ideas that require so much explaining. And so, like, they're like thought out to a point of like craziness, you know. Tower of God, Omniscient Reader, you know. It's not super simple. It's like quite complex. It's simple ideas over and over and over and over again, and so many layers of them that it becomes a very complex idea, if you get what I mean. But yeah, I'm super excited. I just want to talk about Omniscient Reader, and it's a great story, and Dokja and Jungkook are fantastic protagonists, and you should definitely read it. It's been your boy Supreme Cheer the God. Make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe. I'm out.